Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to the Lost Voice radio program, where your hosts, John and Jacob, seek to rediscover the lost voice of wisdom once spoken to Socrates. John is currently missing. He's on his way. But today we're going to kind of get back to the roots of what the Lost Voice was supposed to be about when we first started this well over a year ago now. And as I speak, here comes Mr. Studi. Welcome aboard.
Why would you assume it's me? I
saw your name come up on my computer screen.
Oh, well,
yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good indicator. Have you done the introduction yet?
Unless you don't. No, I already did the introduction.
Oh, well, hello, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm a little late. Did you tell everybody I was going to be late?
I did.
I wasn't listening. Oh, okay. Hi, everybody.
That's pretty on time, though. You were on within the first minute, so good work.
It is. I was trying really hard to get here.
I was just saying that today we're going to actually kind of go back to the roots of the Lost Voice program. We started well over a year ago now, which is fabulous. But the roots were really to apply Catholic principles and perspective to modern-day activities, events, family life, that kind of thing. And we've done a lot of really great stuff, good stuff. Well, I guess we've done some things about philosophy and theology and whatever else. But we haven't really jumped too deeply into current events. And part of that was because, different times we had to do recorded shows or whatever, and then you're not really dealing with current events of the day. And so kind of got off away from that a little bit. But today we're going to talk about the great Trump-Kim summit, nuclear de-armament and that sort of thing. So that should be pretty exciting and give a little Catholic perspective to a pretty historic event.
Oh, this is a very historic event. He's the first sitting president to actually meet with the great leader of North Korea, and there's been a lot of fire in the media about Trump's performance and what the deal actually brought about, how we came to this position, and people have been either giving credit to Trump or detracting from him because they want to take away any work that he's actually done there. But man, it's been a really intense process, going from Trump and Kim Jong-un and exchanging insults with. I think I love the Rocket Man thing. That was fantastic.
That was great.
And then one
of my favorites was that will somebody remind him that my nuclear button is bigger?
But actually, though, that's one of the things that drove me nuts about this whole thing is Kim Jong-un's making these threats, and if he launches a nuke or something, and even if we don't shoot it down, who knows if it's going to guide to the right place? If it destroys a U.S. city, North Korea's going to be pancaked overnight. It's going to be. They're done. The United States military can be anywhere in the world in 24 hours and enforce their infrastructure and their military hardware is decades out of date. And
they're using stuff from the Cold War. They have leftover Soviet stuff from the 70s.
Right, and there's a bit of what do you call it? We have a bit of history of how those sorts of engagements would unfold with the first Iraq War. Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi army at the time, that was I think the third or fourth largest military in the world. But then within 3 days, they were down to something like 118th because the industrial and technological might of the United States Army was just so overwhelming. Although one of the bigger issues with North Korea is their terrain is much more difficult to actually have some sort of land invasion, and the reason for that is the presence of a large mountain range in which most of their artillery pieces are hidden, and that's something that they've been working on for decades, making sure that those artillery pieces are protected. Because as soon as a attack would start, what they would do is they would start launching their artillery units and trying to strike South Korean cities and military and cannon entrenchments, which would be mildly effective, particularly in the psychological realm, because of the damage that would do to a city. But again, part of the issue is that especially if the United States and South Korea have their Air Force presence already in active patrol, they're not going to have too many shots with that artillery before most of the installations are taken out. So in either case, a lot of their weaponry wouldn't last very long. But in any case, I think I don't know how deluded Kim Jong-un had to be to make those kind of threats, or if it was just blustering in knowing that Westerners tend not to have much of a stomach for war anymore, particularly the United States.
Right. Well, I think there's also perhaps a bit of the little dog syndrome.
Yep.
Little dogs, they bark super loud at big dogs walking by, to bolster themselves and build themselves up and make them feel tougher. So there's probably a little bit of that too.
Right.
One thing I want to get really clear right away, though, with this Trump-Kim summit is that it was not the result of anything Barack Obama did, because there are people like on CNN saying that anything good coming from this is because of all the work Barack Obama did. No credit's due to Trump, which is ridiculous because Obama just ignored North Korea for 8 years.
Oh, no. He once wrote him a strongly worded letter.
Yes.
But that's about it.
Right. So this is for better or for worse. However this turns out, good or bad, it's on Trump. He owns this. It's nobody else.
Yep, I completely agree. I think that Trump's strategy of maximum pressure certainly worked. They were choking the economy of North Korea to the point where even the capital city of Pyongyang had to shut off a lot of electricity, or at least ration it. Which, considering that's where Kim Jong-un is, he was probably the only person in the whole city, whole nation, who had 24-hour electrical service. Because, he's the dictator. But for the people there, that must have been extremely difficult. Granted, they're used to living in impoverished conditions, but still, even on top of the loss of electricity, the loss of just normal necessary resources like food and water and sanitation, having those public services taken away simply due to lack of resources, certainly fomented, I'm sure, a lot of contempt towards the regime, whether or not they are vocalizing it publicly. And I think that the Kim regime recognized that and understood it. They've got to be at least honest enough with themselves to know that having a population that's starving and leaving it that way for a very long time isn't going to result in a whole lot of benefit their way.
Right. One of the criticisms against Trump with this whole thing, too, is that he's somehow legitimizing this despotic dictator. And I think there's something in that we should really be mindful of, because it's funny because Dennis Rodman is like our chief negotiator now, right? That does actually provide an opportunity to kind of make this leader, Kim Jong-un, less creepy, maybe more accessible, more human. And that does have a benefit to it in terms of negotiating and trying to bring North Korea to the table and all of the stuff. But the danger is that we forget that Kim Jong-un has over 100,000 people in the Gulag for political purposes.
100,000 people where?
In the Gulags.
Oh, yes.
Detentions, terrible detention centers. And he's also, the last report that I came across, it was that still in 2016, was that he was investing millions into concentration camps. And so even though I don't think one meeting somehow legitimizes everything Kim Jong-un does. We should also be mindful that this man has committed a great many atrocities. But that's all the more reason to bring him to the table. I mean, Hitler committed all kinds of terrible atrocities, and, nobody talked, the best we had was Neville Chamberlain, who just basically gave Hitler whatever he wanted in the hopes he would stop.
Right, which is more or less been the standard procedure of the past American presidents, is to make a big deal of denuclearize and cut down the rhetoric about attacking South Korea or the United States. And then then we'll back off some of these economic sanctions. But that's resulted in obviously the development of their nuclear weapons, which actually makes them a dangerous country to attack or to have in that region.
Right. And so if you look at any other organization where you have a rogue coworker or something like that, meeting with them doesn't legitimize the difficulties or the issues or the problems that they're creating. But the only way to solve it is to enter into dialogue. Anything short of actually lobbing missiles over there, but to enter into dialogue to avoid that, and you want things this man has done, retain employees, that kind of thing. You enter into dialogue with them to correct their ways so that you don't have to fire them.
And I think that's
so. This whole thing of Trump legitimizing Kim Jong-un, I think, is one of those things where it's kind of ridiculous, but we also need to be mindful of still the terrible things this man has done. But that this is, as Trump has said repeatedly, it's a process.
He has, on the other hand, in contrast to his father and grandfather, been known in North Korea as something more of a people person. Yeah. And while that is obviously not led to the altogether increase in living standards of the people in North Korea, he has done things like trying to renew the economy and raise the quality of life, particularly of food and even entertainment and just generally helping people enjoy life a little bit more, which is a good thing and I think a good sign. And so there's probably something within Kim Jong-un's personality that is accessible and turning to the light side, so to speak. If you think of it like Star Wars, Darth Vader had that tiny bit of good left in him. He finally turned to the light side at the end when he, because of the love he had for his son. And so perhaps there's that small ray of light within Kim Jong-un that Trump can appeal to in order to help him, in order to help the people of North Korea, which people we should be concerned about as well, who are suffering massively, and allowing Kim Jong-un to enter into the marketplace into the international arena, and finding ways for him to denuclearize and be legitimized, and for there to be stability within the country in terms of its governance, and might actually be a good thing if Kim is legitimized to some extent. He's particularly in North Korea, and he is more willing to concede to outside sanctions on nuclearization, and as long as he is able to maintain control of the regime.
Right. So I've heard a few different perspectives on that idea. One is that the closest thing we have in comparison is the Cold War and the fall of the Soviet Union, Berlin Wall, and all of that. And what really got Gorbachev to, what motivated him was that he wanted a more liberalized Russia. He wanted more capitalism. He wanted better conditions, all of that. And so Reagan, in a sense, had an inside man in the Soviet Union that helped facilitate the fall. But part of the difficulty with Kim Jong-un, some people think, is that he doesn't actually want a more prosperous nation, because it's once those floodgates open and people see the despotism they've been living under, they're going to remove the Kim family from power, because now they see that something better is available. And so the idea is that perhaps great prosperity would not be good for Kim, but rather the motivating factor for him is this popularity on the world stage. He's seen as some kind of hero, and so it's more egotistical than it is altruistic for his people.
Sure. Well, there is something interesting. I've seen a number of interviews from people who have fled the regime, and despite kind of what we think about the people who live in North Korea, they tend to know a bit more about the outside world than we assume, or than what they're actually allowed to access. And they know that what North Korea, what the government tells us about the United States, largely isn't true. I mean, they tend to be surprised how kind Americans tend to be.
Yeah.
But they know that the conditions that they're living in aren't great. They know that North Korea isn't sending hot dogs and coffee over to impoverished American citizens whose government has completely failed them in all respects, and they just know this stuff is not true. But they also know it's and even despite their knowledge of oppression, many of them have strong patriotic ties, either to North Korea in general, and even to the Kim dynasty. And so there might be less of a threat of insurrection than we would assume on the Western side. And a part of that might be due to the fact that we live in a kind of a revolutionary culture. We live in a culture that is all about individualistic rights, and we neglect things, or we poo-poo things like tradition and honor and family, whereas in Korea, they see their bloodline as something that's vitally important to who they are, and their history as a necessary component of their identity, and they respect that, and they want to keep that together.
It's very true, and that's in part the punishment in North Korea is that if you offend the regime or you do something especially grievous or out of line, they don't just punish you; they punish 3 generations of your family. Which is something that I don't think a lot of Americans really understand or think about the gravity of it. But you're talking about your grandchildren are going to be punished for something that you do, and it just goes to show how seriously they take their genealogy and how they value, like you said, their own bloodlines and the notion of honor within society.
Right. And so that's where I think that having a progressive change in the state of North Korean life would be, in the long run, a good thing for North Koreans and the world as a whole, and hopefully for the entire Korean Peninsula. Both citizens of both sides know that there are family members who want to be reunited. In fact, there's a yearly celebration where the people come together and family members, cousins, grandparents, etc., come and spend time together at the border in the demilitarized zone. And it's relatively open. I mean, granted, there's a lot of security that takes place and manages the whole thing, but they allow for the reunification of these families. And when you talk to many South Koreans, they recognize that the North is a great threat. But at the same time, they recognize that the people who are north of the border are nonetheless still the same bloodline, still the same linguistic and cultural heritage, and that for them is a strong motivator for reunification, which I think would only be possible if the North Korean regime is, to some extent, given an opportunity to enter back into the world stage and find ways to reunite with South Korea as an economic ally, as somebody they can rely on really as a brother, and letting go of some of the old prejudices and disputes which have happened in the past. And we'll see where this goes with Kim, but the fact that he's out and meeting with the United States president and making some of the concessions he is, I think is a good sign of things to come. Might be a generation or two from now, but
right. But I mean, it's a slow burn, right? It takes time for these things to develop, and just say North Korea wants to be reintegrated into the world. That takes time. It's not just something where you sign a treaty and it's all over. It takes time to figure out their place in the world and how to trade, who to trade with, border security, all this kind of stuff. and so that takes time. One of the things that I find very difficult to understand, and this does happen within Catholic circles and as well as secular ones, but this idea that we can't dialogue or even befriend nations that we've traditionally been opposed to, and this whole trying to, I just don't nail Trump down on collusion with Russia. Obviously, if he colluded with Russia, that would be a great crime. But when he was speaking positively about Vladimir Putin, now, Putin's not a good man either. He's done a ton of atrocious things. But to think that we can't somehow have a better relationship with Russia because that would be, so offensive to American idealism or whatever, I just don't understand that. I mean, it's good to have national pride. It's good to remember history because we don't want history to repeat itself. But at the same time, to just be in a state of perpetual antagonism with one specific other country, it doesn't make sense to me. If there's an opportunity to improve relations, isn't that best for the world and for not just the world as a whole, but the citizens within each country? I mean, that's the thing I don't get.
At the recent G7 conference, which took place just days before the summit with Kim, is that Trump requested that Russia be readmitted into the G8. Into the G8, yeah. And part of it is because they are still an economic and military powerhouse, and that they are concerned about real things in the world to resolve, not just all these quote unquote human rights issues of gay marriage and allowing people to have transgender surgeries and abortion, but would actually look to finding resolution to things like what's going on in Syria or real human rights atrocities that are going on in the world, or economic difficulties that are plaguing all those nations, particularly I think particularly within the European countries. They are just starting to dive bomb in their financial power because of their lack of high birth rate, the socialism that's taken place, the influx of large numbers of immigrants who are not contributing to the system as much as they're taking out of it, and seeing those things as rather than seeing those things as something that's detrimental to the welfare of Europe and the world as a whole, it tends to be an issue that we have to find more ways to help these refugees take advantage of us, essentially. Whereas Russia, if you look at their history of these things, they can get very practical. They are more focused on whether or not this is going to better the living conditions of Russians and even the people who are going to be coming into the country. And for the most part, they've determined that no, it's not going to better the living conditions just to admit them.
Well, so going back onto the Russia thing, the reason why they were kicked out is because their invasion into the Crimean Peninsula of Ukraine, and I know people in Ukraine, and that's still an ongoing conflict, and that's something people don't realize, is that there are still people identified with Russia, not necessarily the Russian military itself, but Russian guerrillas, people doing guerrilla warfare, not Russian guerrillas. But the Russian guerrillas are still battling in Ukraine, and there are still a great number of Ukrainians who are dying because of this conflict, and people don't realize this is still going on. Now, this is the reason why Russia was kicked out of the G8 to begin with. But, and I'm certainly not a foreign affairs specialist, but Russia doesn't actually gain or lose anything in particular by being in or out of the G8. They lose maybe a small footing on the world stage, but they have a permanent spot on the Security Council in the UN anyway. So it's not like it was a big punishment. It seemed like it was a lot more political grandstanding by Barack Obama. Not that he would ever politically grandstand for anything. Hashtag sarcasm. But it seems that to enter into dialogue with Russia and try and resolve this would be much more effective through something like the G8. than by kicking them out or kicking Russia out. It's not like kicking them out, place sanctions on them or any. I mean, it really had little effect on Russia at all. And quite frankly, the Crimean Peninsula is far more valuable, especially in terms of trade for Russia, than being a part of a silly group of 8 that never actually accomplishes anything other than a pithy statement every year.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the problem with the G7/G8 Council is that it's supposed to be a gathering of some of the world's strongest economies, but that's not the case anymore. If you're going to be looking at the strongest economies, particularly ones that are growing, you're going to look at the United States, you're going to look at Russia, you're going to look at India, you're going to look at China, you're going to look at Saudi Arabia. Those are the people who are able to make a real impact in the world if they pool together their wealth to tackle an issue.
I thought it was interesting that I love Italy. I want to live in Italy. I don't see them as one of the top 7 economies in the world. I mean, people love pasta and olive oil, but for Italy to be in it, not China, seems odd. And Germany's a pretty big economy, but France, Canada, I mean, France and Canada don't do anything. France just lives
not really.
And Canada, I don't know, what does Canada do?
It imposes $240 or 240% tax on dairy products in the United States.
And their prime minister loses eyebrows.
Wait, what? He lost his eyebrows.
His fake eyebrow fell off at the G7.
What?
Yeah, look it up.
No way. I'm looking this up right now.
Not that you and I want to be inflammatory towards other nations, but Canada, France, Italy, not exactly the archetype of strong economies, especially because France is a socialist state now too.
Right. Fake eyebrows. Who does that? It's ridiculous. Holy cow.
Yeah, good old Justin Trudeau.
Any remote respect I had for him is gone.
I didn't have any.
And this is something I've been wondering about too. Is and I think you and I talked about this a bit a couple weeks ago. Is it seems as if worldwide, in the Western Hemisphere anyway, there's a rightward movement that is a strong reaction against the rampant leftism that's taken hold of the university and the media.
Yeah.
And much of the culture as a whole. And I think we're seeing some. And for me, the problem is, am I in an echo chamber? Hearing my friends, the news sources that I go to, is it something that I'm just hearing my own voice over and over again? But I think the fact that Quebec recently they voted in somebody they call the Trump of the North as their provincial prime minister. That's a pretty strong indication of the way things are going, considering that Canada is a socialist country. If they're electing somebody whether it's a third of the population of Canada lives in Quebec, if they're voting somebody in like that, well, what is going to happen in some of the bigger elections? Is there a tide coming where there's going to be a surge of more right-wing governments, or moving towards something that's a bit more central or nationalistic in the Western Hemisphere?
Well, I think if you want a good litmus test, you look at Italy, because Italy for a long time has been quite progressive and a little bit going down the road of the left. Let's just put it that way. And their new prime minister actually is talking about possibly leaving the European Union and being more staunchly Italian. They're looking at immigration policies. And their new family minister is talking about how children should have a mother and a father, and that children who are in families with 2 dads or 2 moms tend to suffer a lot because of that. And he also goes to traditional Latin Mass, and his name is Lorenzo Fontana. But if Italy is electing these people and appointing these people, I think that's a crazy litmus test for the nationalistic wave going around the world that started really with Donald Trump. And not that nationalism itself is virtuous or good, but I think having a strong national identity and preserving one's own culture is a good thing. And
right, there's many different modes of human expression, and as much as the left lauds multiculturalism, what it amounts to is everybody thinking as a leftist rather than allowing the truth to be refracted in as many ways as possible, the diversity of human expression. Mm-hmm. And when we start talking about nationalism, I think that it's important. Nationalism does see itself as we're self-sufficient, we put our own country first, which those sorts of things are largely good. And if the good of the community of people who agree on common values and look to make look to create a society which is based on heritage or mission or what have you, they're going to make decisions that are going to advance themselves and help themselves. But a part of that is making sure that you're entering into right relations or good relations with nations around you. If we just take it down to a personal level, everybody is seeking after their own good, but a part of our own good at the human level is proper relations with other humans, because that's the kind of creature that we are. And at the larger level, the macro, I think it's the same way with nations and city-states, is that in order to have a prosperous society in a city or in a city-state or a nation, you're going to have good relationships with those around you, and not the least of which is because the products that you pump out aren't always going to be the best that you can offer to your people. Say that the United States makes great cars, but Britain makes really good farm equipment or whatever, and so then you recognize that and you allow trade to come through because of those things, and you don't and you try to make it as a fair deal for both parties as you can, and that way both nations benefit from the prosperity that is mutual.
Right. So then, speaking of trade, this is like Trump hour right now, and his proposal of tariffs, and this is upsetting all kinds of people. And of course, what got reported is that Trump wants to impose these tariffs, and it's like 25% on steel and 15% on aluminum to Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. And so that's what gets reported. What didn't get reported, at least by the typical mainstream media, as Rush Limbaugh calls it, the drive-by media, is that Trump offered the G7 to let's lift all tariffs. You don't like these tariffs? Let's get rid of all tariffs, because then we have totally free trade that benefits everybody. Well, guess who didn't want to do that? The rest of the G7. That should tell us something about, Trump may fidget with numbers and rhetoric and that kind of stuff, but the general principles that he's offering tend to come out to be true. That that the figure you said on the tariff on dairy was 270% that Canada taxes or tariffs American dairy products. I've read that it's not quite as simple as that flat number, but the point is that there is a large tariff on our dairy going to Canada. Okay, well, that doesn't really benefit us, right? It limits our trade. It causes higher prices in Canada. So Trump says, fine, I'm going to slap tariffs on this stuff. You guys don't like it? Let's get rid of all tariffs. And I actually think it's potentially a pretty smart move on his part, because those nations don't want tariffs. And yes, it would hurt our economy. I don't generally think tariffs are a good thing depending on the nation and the product, but in any case, that it didn't get reported that Trump wanted to get rid of all the tariffs.
Yeah, and I'm reading about that right now, and it's always so revealing what you hear about in the media. For instance, there was a simple there's simple evidence of this, or simple example of this. I'm sure you've seen the picture of the other G7 countries standing up and looking at President Trump while he's sitting down and crossing his arms, and everybody's staring him down. What's fascinating about that is if you at the next moment, you see another picture. There's another picture that was taken of Trump leaning forward, and everybody's smiling, everybody's laughing together. And so you got to ask the question, what do they want you to see? Well, it's what they want you to see. It's what they send out. And this is the kind of stuff that you encounter all the time, is this manipulation of what's going on in the world to harm people's reputations, or to harm certain ideals in order to fit a narrative. And it's troubling for me whether it happens on the right or the left. It's troubling because if we are so committed to our ideology that we abandon the truth, then our ideology is something that's at odds with ultimately what's our own good. And I think that is one of the hallmarks of human sin, is putting your own self-desires about what reality ought to be above the truth of the world around you. And I think that again reflects the fall, where you had Adam and Eve basically say to God, "You are not king of the universe. We are. We make up the rules. We are the ones who make decisions based on our own desires." And we're seeing that now, and I can't imagine that's going to be a beneficial thing for us in the long run. And so my hope, to some extent here, and I get a feeling that people are starting to realize this, is that we need to put our ideologies aside in the pursuit of the real truth of the matter.
Yes.
And the difficulty is trying to weed through some of the information that's put out there. And there's so much that's put out there that is just kind of done for you. And that's, I think, what most people more or less want, is to go to the barbershop and see, or the bar, and see CNN on there, and that's where you get your news, instead of sitting down and researching it out yourself. There's a large swath of the population who's going to be doing that, and so they're still going to be receiving the narrative of the mainstream media, or the drive-by media, like you said. But there is, especially with millennials and the post-millennials, Generation Z, where they are beginning to learn how to discern media outlets through social media, through searching things, and through looking at political fact-checking websites, often which are unfortunately biased themselves. But it's kind of a tough situation to think, how are we going to overcome this as a culture? Getting rid of, or overcoming our predisposition to valuing our ideology over and above our commitment to the common good, or the truth of the world around us.
Right. Did you know that En route Books and Media is now adding TV?
What? No, I didn't. Tell me about
our
this,
number one fan emailed us and told us about it. So we're not really employees; we're volunteers for WCAT. But it's funny, one of our listeners knows more about the company than we do. But
Jeez.
TV, it looks like it's a YouTube channel, which they asked if we'd be venturing out, spreading our wings, and I said, well, I have a face for the radio, so I'm not sure we want to do that. But anyway, on YouTube, WCAT TV. Go subscribe.
I'll have to take a look at that. I mean, in fact, I'd be willing to do a TV show, depending on the format and possibilities that are found therein.
You don't think we have enough to do?
No, yeah, we do. We have way too much to do. Life is crazy.
Yeah. Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
Never. Never, never, never. Never, never.
Well, what else is new for you, Studi? What's new in the last week?
Well, there's one thing, but I'm gonna have to wait until after July 1st to actually announce that publicly.
I know what it is, don't I?
Yeah, there's some pretty big news regarding what the heck? What is this?
You should probably stop right there, just regarding you.
Regarding a thing about me.
Yes.
And I am very much looking forward to seeing that come to fruition, and it's going to be a great opportunity for me to synergize with some of my other projects. That way I'm doing more with less effort, which will be great. But otherwise, I actually have Extreme Faith Camp coming up next week, and
I'm supposed to come down for that.
Yeah, I'm nervous about it, like I am every year.
Do you want me to come Thursday night and give the guys talk?
I mean, sure. I'm good with that.
You're the only male youth minister now, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Well, if you need me to come give the guys talk, so I can yell at middle schoolers for a while and make them scared.
Which is basically your specialty.
It really is, but it's effective.
Yeah, no, you do what works. Well, I think last night I gave a pretty good talk. Well, that's one of the reasons why that Jordan Peterson guy has been becoming so has become so popular. Is because he does challenge men. He challenges young men.
Yeah.
Even points it out too, is that young men look to him as something of a quasi-father figure, because for most of their lives either they've ever had no father figure, or those who would purport to be their father figures have largely delegitimized them or struck them down because they're like women. Not celebrating the unique genius that's in masculinity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But not the Jordan Peterson. I would love to have Jordan Peterson on the phone sometime. I'd, in a way, almost be afraid of having him on there, because he is so quick-witted, and he never quite knows what he's going to say. But I think for the most part, he's going to offer something that's pretty solid. Plus, we'd probably have to pay to have him on. We'd have absolutely no money.
Yeah.
We kind of have to shoot for the lowest common denominator for all of our guests. Sorry, Dr. Delfino. Sorry, Dr. Rex.
We'd have to pay him in platitudes. Is the platitude platypus available?
The platitude platypus is always available. And he says today that if your mind can conceive it, you can achieve it.
Perfect.
Yes. That was actually more or less the ideology of the church I grew up in. So sometimes that's something I have to back out of. My own mindset is not being so overly optimistic. And confronting reality as it is. How about you, Jake? What's new in your life? I'm sure the listeners are eagerly waiting to hear updates about the great Jake.
Well, I guess the only thing I've really been doing is working on my bathroom, doing a renovation. So ripped out the old tub and shower and taking linoleum up off the concrete subfloor, taking the toilet out, vanity out. I now have the new shower and tub installed, and all the tile is installed. And tonight I will be grouting the tile. So, real exciting. And then hopefully Thursday I'll be putting a new toilet and vanity in anticipation for hosting a priest for dinner Friday night, because that's our guest bathroom. So
yeah, we've really got to get over. We've really got to get on a priest having dinner at our house and blessing it.
You need your house blessed.
I know. Michael had another incident the other day.
Oh, perfect. Go on.
What was it, like a week? It was like 2 weeks ago, I think, and I was putting him to bed, and he was laying down in his crib and just kind of like looking up in the air and just talking about random stuff. Then he starts saying, I want the big green monster to come out to play right now. Where is he? Big green monster. I'm like, what are you talking about, child? Where's this big green monster? Did I ever tell you about when Michael and I we were fixing up the windows in the girls' room and putting up curtains, and Michael had a little plastic hammer, and he was just kind of banging on the window frame, and he said, "Oh, hold on a second. I'll be right back. I heard something in my room." And he just hops off the stool that he was on and scuttles on over to his room and goes in there, comes back, in about 15 seconds, and he says, "Okay, there was somebody in my room, but he's not there anymore." And he just like comes over and, I ask him like, "Oh, I go, what happened? What did you hear?" And he said that, and I'm like, "Holy cow!" And so I had a screwdriver in my hand. I'm like, "Well, better go into stabbing mode, because if there's somebody in Michael's room, he's dead. I'm going to kill them." And obviously Michael is totally fine with this. And so I walk over there, and nobody's in there. I search the rest of the house, and holy cow, it was ridiculous.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
It sounds frightening.
No, it's very frightening. But we need to bust our house.
Yeah. You do.
Oh, that's the first thing that's happened in a while. The girls thankfully don't have those like weird quasi-haunting horror movie statements, which is great. Glad it's only my son, my biological son, who's a scary one. I'd rather only have one scary child than all three of them. At least they're.
That's the only child that actually has your genetics, so it does explain a little bit.
That would make sense actually.
Yeah.
For him to be a little bit scary if he has my genetics to be the horrible one. But I am looking forward to next week with him, because originally I was going to be taking all three kids to camp, but due to certain circumstances, he's going to be the only one I'm able to bring along. But it should be an absolute blast.
Michael's the only one to bring him with?
Yep, he's coming to camp now.
Oh, okay.
And so we're finding that he likes to stay up anyway. And so he's probably just going to hang out with me all day. I'm going to see if I can order like a little daddle, a little saddle that you put on yourself, and you're going to hop onto your hip or your back, and you can run around with them, and you don't have to burn yourself out all the time. I mean, I'm going to get strong doing these things. But taking up and down that big hill.
Right.
And so I'm really looking forward to that. But I think he'll do a good job staying awake and being in good mood, and he's gonna love being with Dad all by himself for a week. That's one of the things he always talks about is not having Dad around quite as often as he used to, or at least not all the attention that he's accustomed to getting.
Used to, yeah.
Yeah. But in any case,
So this is random, but are you on LinkedIn there, Mr. Studi?
I am, and I need to fix it up, actually.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a fair amount, and the feed on there offers some odd things from time to time. One of them on there right now is this young man who's juggling 3 Rubik's Cubes and solving them as he juggles them.
I know, I saw that too. It was amazing. Oh, so that was great. We should get a Facebook page or something.
I don't understand. We have a Facebook page, I believe.
We do?
I think so.
Okay, you're looking really lost.
I think Dr. Mafood had somebody set it up for us.
Let's see. Lost Voice guys. Is it this one? Nope, that's definitely not us. Lost Voice Radio. If not, I can make one. I'm just saying, because if we had a radio page and we can do stuff. Yep, looks like we do not have a Facebook page.
Huh.
So I see anyway. Lost Voice.
Maybe Dr. Mafood never got around to it.
Oh, I'm sure he did. He just probably gave up on it because we never did anything with it. I don't know what he did with it. I have no idea if he got a Facebook page. But it'd be great to kind of post these things on there. But anyway, so I saw one of these videos. Those like this, the one that you're talking about, the kid juggling the Rubik's Cubes. But it had all these dumb human tricks, and one that I saw that was just, when I told Molly about it, she said, "Well, that's stupid." But I thought it was amazing. There was a guy who set up a series of metal plates, put a blindfold on, and then shot an arrow. And he it ricocheted around all these plates and came back at him, and he caught it. He caught the arrow in midair. And by the way, it was inches away from his head.
Wow.
Going fairly fast. I'm sure the tip he had on it wouldn't have done it great deal of damage because he would have been an absolute fool to put a tip on it that's supposed to penetrate the cranium. But regardless, that's amazing. He would have gotten hurt pretty badly if he would have screwed that one up. But some of the things that people can do are absolutely astounding with their bodies. And the fact that he and that's one of the interesting things I find about the human person is that the incredible amount of the skill and precision that we can achieve through the intentional practice or the intentional habituation of our bodies in accordance with the dictates of our intellect, bringing us above and beyond anything that we could achieve in our natural state is incredible. In a way, we have the ability to bring ourselves above and beyond our natures in that way, because it's something that I don't think we're, at least for a very, very long time, ever going to be able to program a robot to do. Heck, I think that it was a big deal to have a robot walk and run, or do a backflip not too long ago. In our bodies, the ones that God designed, do all those things, and then at the same time operate our heart and our nervous system and our immune system, digestive tract, and all that jazz, and then add on top of our own ability to hone our skills to that point. That's crazy. I love it. I have no idea what decided to do anything, and I'm sure everybody's loving our rants. But I don't know. It's
our whole show is a rant, though.
What was that?
Our whole show is a rant.
It is. We just kind of come on and say what.
Right. And speaking of, great rants, do you want to continue the conductor story today?
Oh, we have to. I was just waiting for that. So I think where we last left off, our hero was coming to the point where he finally had the ability to take up his own train conducting career. Okay.
He had just started training on a bullet train.
He had started training on a bullet train. And as he was on this bullet train, he found himself with this experiencing this great exhilaration, recognizing that his whole life has been leading up to this moment. But as he reflected on the many failures of his past, and the death of his father, and the destruction of his neighborhood, and the violations that he committed when he was in high school, and the things that were taken away from him as a child, he suddenly fell into this great pit of despair, thinking to himself that my whole past has been marked by a series of failures to achieve the great dreams that I strive for, and to lack in every way the talents and the skills necessary to truly engage in a great way my passion, which is, of course, trains. And as he falls into this nihilistic realization of his own futile pursuits of anything that could bring him joy and passion in life, he recognizes that not only should his life come to an end, but also that of all the passengers on board, because they're in the same position he is. He really suffered a psychotic break here. And in the midst of his psychotic break, he took a wrench that was meant to help repair the train, and he knocked out his pilot that was training him on this train, and took control. He locked down all the doors, sealing several hundred passengers inside this large metal coffin, and he began to push the accelerator down further and further and further, which brought the train up to its maximum speed of 400 miles per hour. And at such a rate, he obviously traversed quite a bit of this distance, and in fact actually crossed into another state. And so now this crime of hijacking a train has entered into the federal level. And so this is a federal crime. It's going to be a real felony here. And he continues to press the lever down, and taking his knowledge of trains, he finds a way to take the governor off the engine, which is supposed to limit the speed that this train is able to go, both for the sake of both for the sake of the safety of the passengers and the train as a whole, but also for the sake of maintaining integrity within the parts of the train. And so he finds a way to disable that, because this train is electrically powered rather than steam powered. So he's able to work through the computers to find a way to hack that system off. And he actually increases the speed to the point where he is just shy of breaking the sound barrier, and he's watching the speedometer, hoping to get that thrill of hearing that boom that you hear when the air compresses so much that it actually pops. There's almost a mini explosion that you have when you're passing through that sound barrier of 730 miles per hour. And finally, he achieves it. But the moment he achieves it is just seconds before he comes up to a very slight curve. And as anybody who's ever driven their bike down a hill recognizes, if you're going very quickly and you make a small correction, particularly if you actually turn the front wheel, then things aren't going to turn out well for you. You're going to go head over handlebars if you're actually in the train, or if you're head over handlebars, or you're going to fall off the side. And what happens is the train goes head over handlebars, and so the back end of the train lifts up and continues, but as it lifts up, it decelerates to the point where the front end of the train, while still moving fairly quickly here, slows down in its impact, and all the passenger cars slam onto the ground and completely annihilating not only the cars themselves, but all of the passengers that are seated therein. However, because of the luck of physics, the strange circumstances, and everything else that's contributed to the life of this strange young man whose dreams of operating a locomotive have come to a sudden end, doesn't come to a sudden end. He lives through it, albeit he's a bit bruised and scarred, but for the most part, he's none the worse for wear. And obviously, he's arrested, and being that this is a federal crime, and a federal crime to the extent that it is, with the loss of life and the loss of property and the damage that's done, he of course is considered a prime candidate for the death penalty. And the issue is, I know it's a real tragic thing, but the issue is that as with every capital crime, there needs to be a trial. And this trial is going to have to take place well in the future, as will the rest of the story. Because we only have a few minutes left, Jacob. Hey, look at that transition.
That was good.
It is.
So we're going to get to the trial next week.
We're going to get to the trial next week, and we're going to see how that goes. Because I have the story all planned out and know exactly how it's going to unfold.
Oh, Studi.
Oh, I know, Jake. I know. Well, listeners, with 2 minutes left, I thank you for all of your patience and all of your kindness listening to us over the last year. All
Jake,
five
have
of
a lot
you.
of doctors in the audience?
Why would we have any doctors in the audience?
I don't know. You thank them for their patience.
I mean, we can. This show's going to take enough the air.
We will go down in a blaze of glory.
Shoot us down. We will. If we do go down in a blaze of glory, it's going to have to be a blaze of groaners. Making sure that as we leave, we make sure that we're signing off with the absolute worst quality radio somebody could offer.
That's right.
Which is more or less what we've been doing for the last couple of years here. So
as my favorite radio personality would say, if you can't be biblically good, or if you can't be historically good, you better be biblically bad. So,
yes. You got to recognize where your talents are. And for us,
right.
It happens to be in complete and utter evil. I mean...
No, not evil, just ineptitude.
Yeah. I think you're right on that one, though.
Yeah.
ineptitude categorizes everything that we can have. Anyway, Jacob.
Yes, sir.
It was, of course, wonderful spending time with you today. I miss you.
I miss
in many
you
different
too,
ways.
brother.
And I will have to speak to you later, whether it be here on the radio or in person or on the phone in other ways, or even over Skype. We could see each other, Jake, without being in the same room, which isn't the same. For you listeners who are benefit to our incredibly smooth and mellifluous voices,
dulcet sounds.
This is The Lost Voice. You can contact us at thelostvoice@wkradio.com. God bless.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.